The sound of crackling flames and hissing steam woke Captain Ethan Hayes. His head throbbed, and his vision blurred as he struggled to make sense of his surroundings. The last thing he remembered was piloting the Star Cruiser through a sudden and violent asteroid storm. Now he was lying on scorched ground, the wreckage of the ship scattered across an alien landscape. Ethan groaned as he sat up, his fingers brushing against a jagged tear in his uniform. Around him, pieces of the ship were still smoking, and the faint scent of burning metal filled the air. The planet's twin suns beat down on him, their heat oppressive. He glanced around, his heart sinking at the sight of the devastation. The cruiser was beyond repair. "Is anyone alive?" he called out, his voice hoarse. At first, there was only silence. Then, from behind a piece of shattered hull, he heard a faint groan. Ethan pushed himself to his feet, ignoring the sharp pain in his ribs, and stumbled toward the sound. He pulled aside a piece of debris to find an alien woman with pale blue skin and striking silver eyes struggling to free her leg from a pile of metal. "Hold still," Ethan said, crouching down to help. His hands worked quickly, prying the debris loose. "You're going to be okay." The woman winced, but nodded. "Thank you," she said in a melodic voice, her accent thick, but her words clear. As Ethan helped her to her feet, more sounds of movement reached his ears. One by one, other survivors began emerging from the wreckage. To his surprise, all of them were women, alien women of various species, each more striking than the last. There was Laia, a tall, lithe figure with shimmering green hair and intricate markings on her skin. Saran, a fierce-looking warrior with golden scales and piercing amber eyes. And a dozen more, each with their own unique features. Ethan quickly realized that the survivors were passengers from different corners of the galaxy. The cruiser had been a transport ship, carrying them to a diplomatic summit. Now they were stranded together on an uncharted planet with no communication and no rescue in sight. "Everyone, gather here," Ethan shouted, trying to project authority despite his exhaustion. The women hesitated, exchanging wary glances, but eventually complied. They formed a loose circle around him, their expressions a mixture of fear and suspicion. "We need to stay calm," Ethan began, wiping sweat from his brow. "The ship's beacon is likely damaged, which means no one knows we're here. If we want to survive, we have to work together." Laia stepped forward, her green hair catching the sunlight. "And why should we follow you, human?" she asked, her tone sharp. "You are no leader." Ethan straightened, meeting her gaze. "I'm not asking you to trust me right now. But I'm the only one here who knows the ship's systems, and I can help us figure out our next steps. If you've got a better plan, I'm all ears." There was a murmur among the group, but no one stepped forward to challenge him. After a moment, Saran crossed her arms and said, "Fine. What's the plan?" Ethan organized the group into teams. Some scavenged the wreckage for supplies, water filters, food rations, and tools, while others scouted the surrounding area for shelter. The planet's terrain was rugged, with jagged cliffs and sparse vegetation. The air was breathable, but the heat was relentless. By sunset, the group had managed to set up a makeshift camp near a rocky outcrop that provided some shade. They shared their findings: a few crates of food, a damaged but repairable water purifier, and fragments of communication equipment that might be useful. Ethan sat by the fire that night, his mind racing. The women sat nearby, speaking in hushed tones. He could feel their uncertainty and their unspoken questions. Could they trust him? Could they survive here? For now, all Ethan knew was that they were alive. Tomorrow, they would begin the real work of survival, finding food, repairing what they could, and holding on to hope. But as he looked at the stars above, he couldn't shake the feeling that this planet held secrets they hadn't yet discovered. Stranded on an unknown world with 20 alien women, Ethan knew one thing for certain: their survival depended on unity. And unity would take more than just leadership. It would take trust, courage, and a lot of luck. The twin suns rose over the desolate, rocky landscape, casting long shadows across the remains of the crashed star cruiser. Ethan stood on the ridge above their makeshift camp, surveying the scene. The night had been restless. The survivors were tense and exhausted. They had survived the crash, but now came the real challenge. Staying alive on an uncharted planet with no signs of rescue. Below him, the alien women stirred from their places near the fire. The tension between them was palpable. Each came from a different world, with their own customs and instincts for survival. Ethan realized that if they couldn't unite, survival would be impossible. He climbed down to the camp and clapped his hands, gathering their attention. "All right, everyone," he said, his voice loud and clear. "We need to get organized. If we're going to survive, we need shelter, water, and food, and we need to work together." Laia, the tall, green-haired engineer, raised an eyebrow at him. "And you think a single human can tell us what to do?" Ethan met her gaze calmly. "No, I think we all have skills we can contribute. But someone needs to take the lead and keep things from falling apart." Saran, the golden-scaled warrior, smirked. "He's got a point. If we argue all day, we'll starve before we figure out how to survive." The group murmured in agreement, though some still looked skeptical. Ethan pressed on. "We'll split into teams. Laia, you're in charge of repairing the water purifier. We'll need clean water fast. Saran, take a group to scout the surrounding area for food and any signs of danger. I'll organize the others to set up shelters and sort through the wreckage for supplies." The camp quickly became a hive of activity. Laia worked with a small team to dismantle the water purifier, muttering instructions in her melodic but clipped voice. Ethan checked in on them, offering tools from the wreckage. "This thing's older than I thought," Laia said, wiping sweat from her brow. "But I think I can get it running." "Good," Ethan said. "Clean water's our top priority." Meanwhile, Saran led her scouting party into the rocky terrain beyond the camp. Ethan watched as the warrior moved with precision, her spear-like weapon ready in her hand. Saran's confidence was reassuring, even if her sharp wit made her intimidating. "We'll be back before sunset," she said before disappearing into the distance. Ethan stayed behind with the remaining group, helping them construct shelters from pieces of the ship. The alien women had little experience with teamwork, and tensions flared as they tried to work together. One of them, a quiet woman with soft, lavender-colored skin, hesitated as she tied vines to the makeshift structure. "You're doing fine," Ethan said gently, stepping beside her. "We're all figuring this out as we go." She gave him a small nod, her hand steadying. Slowly, the group began to fall into a rhythm, and the first shelters took shape. By late afternoon, Saran's group returned, carrying strange fruits and roots they had found. "The land's harsh, but it's not barren," she said, tossing a fruit to Ethan. "We'll need to test these first, though." Ethan examined the fruit, its orange skin rough but fragrant. "Good work. We'll set up a fire and see if these are safe to eat." Laia approached, wiping grease from her hands. "The purifier's running," she announced. "It's not perfect, but it'll give us drinkable water." Relief washed over Ethan. "That's great news." As night fell, the camp gathered around the fire. The mood was lighter than the previous night, but unease lingered. They were still stranded, still vulnerable. Ethan stood, addressing the group. "We made progress today," he said. "We've got water, food, and shelter. That's a start. But we need to keep working together if we want to survive. This planet's not going to make it easy for us." The group nodded, their faces reflecting a mix of determination and exhaustion. Laia gave a small smirk. "Not bad for a human." Saran chuckled. "Don't let it go to your head, Captain." Ethan smiled faintly, feeling a spark of hope. They weren't a team yet, but they were moving in the right direction. The challenges ahead were daunting, but for now, they had taken their first step toward survival. together. The camp had settled into a rhythm over the past few days. Shelters were holding up, the water purifier hummed with life, and the strange orange fruits Saran's group had found turned out to be edible. Despite the progress, Ethan knew they couldn't stay in one spot forever. "We need to explore further," Ethan said to the group during their morning meeting by the fire. "The crash site has given us what it can. If there's anything else out there, resources, potential dangers, or even a way off this planet, we have to find it." Laia crossed her arms, her sharp green eyes narrowing. "And what if we find something worse than raiders or starvation? This isn't a human colony, Captain. We don't know what's out there." "We won't know unless we look," Ethan replied calmly. "We'll go in teams. One group stays to keep the camp running, and the other scouts further out. Saran, you lead the scouting team. I'll go with you." Saran gave a toothy grin, her golden scales catching the morning light. Finally, some action. I was starting to get bored. The scouting team set out after gathering supplies, spears, makeshift bags, and a few small containers for water. The planet's rugged terrain stretched endlessly before them, a mixture of jagged rocks, sparse vegetation, and alien colors that shifted under the twin suns. The air was hot, and the faint rustling of unknown creatures kept them on edge. Ethan walked alongside Saran, who moved with the ease of a trained warrior. Behind them were three others. Rin, a quiet, lavender-skinned alien with heightened senses. Talia, a fiery, red-haired alien who volunteered to carry most of the supplies. And Jara, a cautious and analytical woman with pale, silver-toned skin. "Keep your eyes open," Saran said as they reached a narrow gorge. "If something moves, let me deal with it." Ethan nodded. "Let's not pick any fights we can avoid." As they traversed the gorge, Rin's sharp hearing caught something, a faint humming noise. She raised her hand to signal the group to stop. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. The team froze, straining to listen. The hum grew louder, rhythmic and mechanical. Ethan's heart raced. "That's not natural," he said. "Let's move closer, carefully." They followed the sound to the edge of the gorge, where they found something that made them all stop in awe. Embedded in the side of a cliff was a massive structure, clearly not part of the planet's natural landscape. The metallic surface shimmered with an iridescent glow, and the humming noise emanated from within. It was some sort of alien facility, abandoned, perhaps, but still operational. "What is this place?" Talia whispered, her fiery orange hair swaying as she stepped closer. "Looks ancient," Jara said, examining the patterns carved into the metal walls. "But it's still alive." Ethan felt a surge of hope. If this place has power, maybe it has a transmitter or something we can use to call for help. Saran approached the entrance, her spear ready. Or it could have traps or something worse. "We don't know who or what built this." Rin stepped forward, her expression calm but focused. "I can sense movement inside. Faint, but it's there." Ethan took a deep breath. "All right, here's the plan. We go in, but carefully. Stick together, and don't touch anything unless we're sure it's safe." The team entered the facility, their footsteps echoing in the vast, dimly lit corridors. The walls were lined with glowing symbols that pulsed faintly, as if reacting to their presence. The air was cool, a stark contrast to the heat outside. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the place was watching them. As they moved deeper inside, they found remnants of what appeared to be advanced technology, control panels, strange machines, and long-forgotten tools. Jara stopped to examine one of the panels, her fingers hovering over the glowing symbols. "This technology is far beyond anything I've seen. If we can figure out how it works, it could change everything." Rin's ears twitched, and she turned suddenly. "Something's coming." The group tensed as a faint light appeared at the end of the corridor. It grew brighter, accompanied by the sound of mechanical clicks. A spherical drone, sleek and metallic, floated toward them, its glowing center scanning the group. Saran raised her spear, but Ethan held up a hand. "Wait," he said. "Let's see what it does." The drone stopped a few feet away, its glowing eye focusing on Ethan. Then, it emitted a series of tones and symbols that projected into the air. It was communicating. Jara stepped forward cautiously. It's not attacking. It might be a guardian or a guide. Ethan nodded. Let's see where it leads. The glowing drone floated silently ahead, casting an eerie light on the metallic walls of the alien facility. Ethan and his group followed closely, their footsteps echoing in the quiet corridors. The air was cooler inside, with a faint mechanical hum vibrating beneath their feet. It felt like they were walking through the veins of a living machine. What do you think this place is? Talia asked, her voice hushed as if speaking too loudly might awaken something. It's some kind of ancient structure, Jara said, her silver-toned skin reflecting the drone's glow. The technology here is far beyond anything I've ever seen. If it's still operational after all this time, it must have been built by a highly advanced species. Rin, her lavender skin faintly glowing in the dim light, looked uneasy. I can still sense movement, more than just this drone. We're not alone here. Ethan glanced at Saran, who gripped her spear tightly. The golden-scaled warrior nodded at him, silently promising to stay alert. Let's keep moving, Ethan said. We need to figure out what this place is, and if it can help us. The drone led them to a vast central chamber. The walls were lined with glowing panels displaying strange symbols and intricate patterns. In the center of the room stood a large console, its surface pulsing faintly as if inviting interaction. The hum in the air grew louder, filling the chamber with a sense of energy. Jara approached the console, her eyes wide with fascination. This is incredible, she said, running her fingers over the glowing surface. It's some kind of control system. If I can figure out how to read these symbols, we might be able to access its functions. Be careful, Ethan warned. We don't know what activating anything might do. Jara nodded, her focus entirely on the console. She began pressing a series of symbols, her movements deliberate but cautious. The symbols changed and shifted in response, and a low chime echoed through the chamber. Suddenly, a section of the wall lit up, revealing a holographic map of the planet. The map showed detailed topography, highlighting underground tunnels, water sources, and even clusters of energy readings. Ethan's heart raced as he realized the significance. This map could be exactly what we need, he said. It shows resources, potential shelter, and maybe even a way off this planet. Talia pointed to one of the glowing clusters on the map. What's that? It looks like a strong energy signal. It could be a transmitter, Jara said, her voice filled with excitement. If we can reach it, we might be able to send a distress signal. Before they could celebrate, the hum in the air shifted. Rin tensed, her sharp senses alerting her to danger. Something's coming, she said, her voice tight. From the shadows of the chamber, a series of mechanical creatures emerged. They were sleek and spider-like, their glowing eyes scanning the group with an eerie intelligence. The drone that had guided them floated away, as if retreating from the impending confrontation. Servan stepped forward, her spear ready. Guess it's time to fight. Wait, Ethan said, raising a hand. Let's not escalate this. They might not attack unless we provoke them. The spider-like machines hesitated, their glowing eyes flickering. Jara looked at the console and quickly pressed a sequence of symbols. The creatures stopped in their tracks, their movements slowing as if responding to her input. They're connected to the facility, Jara said. I think I've deactivated them. For now. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Good work. Let's not stick around to find out how long that lasts. We've got the map. Let's head back to camp and plan our next move. As they retraced their steps through the facility, the drone reappeared, hovering silently. It didn't guide them this time, but it didn't interfere either. The group exited into the harsh sunlight, the facility's entrance sealing behind them as if it had never been open. Ethan glanced at the others, their faces a mixture of relief and determination. We've got what we came for, he said, Now we need to figure out how to use it. As they made their way back to camp, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the facility had been more than just a source of technology. It had felt alive, almost sentient. Whatever secrets it held, they were only scratching the surface, and he knew their survival might depend on uncovering the truth. "You said," Ethan, and the scouting team returned to camp with a mix of relief and urgency. The glowing holographic map from the alien facility had given them hope, but it also revealed the dangers they faced. The others gathered around as Jara projected the map from a salvaged tablet. The detailed terrain of the planet shimmered in midair, and every eye was fixed on the glowing symbols. "This," Jara said, pointing to a pulsing cluster of light on the map, "is the strongest energy signal. If it's what I think it is, it could be a transmitter. If we activate it, we might be able to send a distress signal and call for rescue." A murmur ran through the group, but Laia, ever the skeptic, folded her arms. "And what if it's not a transmitter? What if it's a trap? Something left behind by whoever built that facility?" Siran, leaning on her spear, smirked. "Sounds like you're scared, Laia. What's the matter? Afraid of a little adventure?" Laia glared at her but didn't respond. Ethan stepped in before the tension escalated. "We don't have many options," he said firmly. "The supplies we salvaged won't last forever. If this is a chance to call for help, we have to take it." The group fell silent, the weight of Ethan's words sinking in. He turned to Jara. "How far is it?" Jara studied the map. "About a day's journey on foot. The terrain looks rough, but manageable." Ethan nodded. "All right. We'll form a team and leave at first light. The rest of you stay here and keep the camp secure." The following morning, Ethan, Siran, Jara, Rin, and Telia set out for the energy source. The group moved cautiously, their supplies packed tightly and their weapons ready. The terrain grew more challenging as they went. Rocky ridges, steep climbs, and dense patches of strange, glowing vegetation. The twin suns beat down on them, their heat relentless. As they climbed a particularly steep ridge, Rin stopped suddenly, her ears twitching. "Something's following us," she whispered. Ethan froze, his hand instinctively moving to the makeshift blade at his side. "Where?" Rin pointed toward a cluster of rocks below. "There. It's staying low, but I can hear it moving." Siran grinned, her golden scales glinting in the sunlight. "Let it come. I could use the exercise." "Let's not fight unless we have to," Ethan said. "Stay alert and keep moving." The group pressed on, but the tension was palpable. Whatever was following them kept its distance, but its presence was unnerving. The sound of rustling rocks and faint growls echoed behind them, a constant reminder that they were being watched. By midday, they reached a plateau overlooking a vast canyon. In the center of the canyon stood the source of the energy reading, a massive, tower-like structure that pulsed with a faint blue light. It was unlike anything they had seen before, its smooth, metallic surface rising high into the sky. "That's it," Jara said, her voice filled with awe. "It has to be a transmitter." Ethan studied the structure, his mind racing. "How do we get to it?" "There's a path leading down into the canyon," Talia said, pointing to a narrow trail. "But it's exposed. If anything's waiting for us down there, we'll be sitting ducks." "We don't have a choice," Ethan said. "We'll move quickly and stay together. Let's go." The descent into the canyon was treacherous. Loose rocks and steep drops made every step dangerous. About halfway down, the growling from earlier grew louder, and a shadow darted across the path above them. "Here they come," Siran shouted, raising her spear. A pack of sleek, four-legged creatures emerged from the rocks, their glowing eyes locked onto the group. They were fast and agile, their movements predatory. "Defensive positions," Ethan yelled. The group formed a tight circle, their weapons ready. Siran was the first to strike, her spear piercing through one of the creatures with ease. Talia used a salvaged energy blade to hold off another, while Rin's quick reflexes allowed her to dodge and counterattack. Ethan fought alongside them, his makeshift blade clashing with the creature's sharp claws. Jara, meanwhile, scrambled to examine the map. "There's a cave up ahead," she shouted. "We can take cover there." "Go," Ethan ordered. "I'll cover you." One by one, the group retreated toward the cave, fending off the creatures as they went. Ethan was the last to enter, narrowly avoiding a swipe from one of their claws. The creatures didn't follow them inside, instead circling the entrance and growling menacingly. Inside the cave, the group caught their breath. "That was too close," Talia said, wiping sweat from her brow. "We're not safe yet," Ethan said, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. "But we're close. We'll rest here for a bit, then make our way to the tower." Ethan and his team emerged from the cave as dawn broke, the twin suns casting long shadows over the canyon. The creatures that had chased them the day before were gone, their growls replaced by the eerie silence of the alien landscape. In the distance, the towering structure stood tall, pulsing with faint blue light. "We're almost there," Ethan said, his voice filled with determination. "Let's move." The team descended the final stretch of the canyon, their exhaustion replaced by a growing sense of urgency. The air grew cooler as they approached the tower, the ground beneath them vibrating faintly with each pulse of light. The structure was massive, its smooth, metallic surface untouched by time or weather. Strange symbols lined its base, glowing faintly as if alive. "This is incredible," Jara whispered, her silver-toned skin reflecting the tower's light. "It's ancient, but it feels active." Ethan placed a hand on the cool surface of the tower. "Let's find a way inside." After circling the base, they found an opening, a narrow doorway that glowed faintly as they approached. The moment Ethan stepped through, the air inside changed. It was cool, almost sterile, and the faint hum of energy grew louder. The walls glowed softly, and intricate patterns seemed to shift as they moved deeper inside. "This place is alive," Talia said, her fiery orange hair catching the light. "It's like it's watching us." Saran gripped her spear tightly. "Let's hope it's not planning anything hostile." The corridor led to a vast central chamber. In the center stood a console similar to the one they had found in the first facility, but much larger. The console pulsed with energy, and above it floated a holographic sphere, displaying a map of the galaxy. "This has to be it," Jara said, stepping forward. "If we can activate this, we might be able to send a signal." "Can you figure it out?" Ethan asked. Jara nodded, her hands already moving over the glowing symbols. "Give me a few minutes." As Jara worked, the hum in the chamber grew louder. Rin tensed, her sharp senses picking up on something. "We're not alone," she said quietly. Ethan turned, his hand instinctively moving to his blade. "What is it?" Rin pointed to the far side of the chamber, where shadows shifted. Slowly, a figure emerged, a tall, humanoid shape with a metallic sheen to its skin. Its eyes glowed faintly, and it moved with deliberate grace. "Is that a guardian?" Talia whispered. The figure raised a hand, and the glowing symbols on the walls began to shift and pulse. A deep, resonant voice filled the chamber, speaking in a language none of them could understand. Jara glanced up from the console. "I think it's responding to me activating the system. It doesn't seem hostile, but it's definitely watching us." Ethan stepped forward cautiously, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We're not here to harm your facility," he said, unsure if the Guardian could even understand him. "We're stranded and need to send a signal for help." The Guardian tilted its head, the light in its eyes intensifying. The holographic sphere above the console shifted, zooming in on a single star system. A series of symbols appeared, and Jara's eyes widened. "It's showing us something," she said. "This star system, it's not far from here. There's a beacon there, one that might amplify our signal." "Can we use this tower to send a signal directly?" Ethan asked. Jara hesitated. "I don't think so. This place seems more like a relay station. It's pointing us to the next step. Before they could act further, the hum in the chamber turned into a low rumble. The Guardian stepped back, its glowing eyes flickering as if warning them. The walls began to shift, and a deep vibration shook the ground. "We need to move," Seren said, her voice urgent. "This place doesn't want us here anymore." Jara quickly downloaded the map onto her tablet. "I've got what we need. Let's go." The team hurried back the way they came, the rumble growing louder with each step. As they exited the tower, the doorway sealed behind them, and the vibrations stopped. The tower returned to its quiet, pulsing state, as if nothing had happened. As they regrouped at the base of the tower, Ethan looked at Jara. "What's the next step?" "We follow the map," she said, showing him the holographic display. "The beacon it pointed to is about 2 days' travel from here." Ethan nodded, his resolve firm. "Then that's where we're going." The group set off, their path lit by the twin suns rising higher in the sky. Despite the dangers and exhaustion, hope burned brightly within them. The tower had given them a clue, a chance at survival, and they weren't going to let it slip away. For the first time since the crash, Ethan felt like they were moving towards something, rather than just surviving. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The twin suns dipped lower in the sky as Ethan and his team trudged through the barren, rocky terrain. Every step felt heavier, and exhaustion clung to them like a second skin. 2 days of relentless travel had pushed them to their limits, but the faint, pulsing light of the beacon ahead kept them moving. "There it is," Jara said, pointing to the horizon. The beacon stood atop a jagged hill, a spire of glowing metal reaching toward the sky. Its rhythmic pulse of blue light seemed to call to them, urging them onward. Seren, ever the warrior, tightened her grip on her spear. "Let's hope whatever's guarding that thing isn't as friendly as the creatures we met before." "We'll handle it," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the fatigue. "This is our chance. We're not turning back now." The climb to the beacon was steep and treacherous. Loose rocks shifted underfoot, and the wind howled around them, carrying the eerie whispers of an alien world. As they neared the top, Rin's sharp senses caught something again. "Something's here," she said, her voice low. "I can feel it, watching us." Talia cursed under her breath. Why is it always something watching us? The group reached the summit, and the beacon loomed before them, its surface shimmering with intricate patterns. The air around it buzzed with energy, and Ethan could feel the hair on his arms standing on end. Jara approached the console at the base of the beacon, her eyes scanning the symbols. "This is it," she said. "I can activate it, but it's going to draw attention. A signal this strong won't go unnoticed." "We don't have a choice," Ethan said, his tone firm. "Get it started. We'll hold off whatever comes." Jara nodded, her fingers dancing over the glowing symbols. The beacon began to hum, its light intensifying with each passing second. The first sign of trouble came moments later. A low growl echoed through the air, and dark shapes appeared on the horizon, moving quickly toward them. The creatures were larger than anything they had encountered before. Sleek, armored beasts with glowing eyes and razor-sharp claws. "Here we go," Seren said, her golden scales glinting in the beacon's light. She stepped forward, spear in hand. "Let's show them what we're made of." Ethan drew his makeshift blade, positioning himself beside Seren. "Protect Jara," he ordered. "She needs time to finish." Talia and Rin flanked Jara, their weapons ready. The creatures closed in, their growls echoing like thunder. The first beast lunged at Ethan, and he barely dodged its claws, countering with a slash that grazed its side. Seren moved like lightning, her spear striking true and sending one of the creatures tumbling down the hill. "They just keep coming," Talia shouted as she slashed at another beast. "How many of these things are there?" "Enough to make this interesting," Seren said with a grin, dodging a swipe and landing a killing blow. Meanwhile, Jara worked furiously at the console. The beacon's hum grew louder, and the symbols on its surface began to glow in complex patterns. Almost there, she called out, "Just keep them off me a little longer." Ethan blocked another attack, his arms burning with effort. "We don't have much left in us. Jara, hurry." One of the creatures broke through their defenses, charging directly at Jara. Rin moved faster than Ethan had ever seen, tackling the beast midair and sending it crashing to the ground. "Not today," she growled, finishing it off with a precise strike. Jara pressed the final sequence of symbols, and the beacon erupted in a blinding column of light that shot into the sky. The creatures froze, their glowing eyes flickering as the energy overwhelmed them. One by one, they retreated, disappearing into the shadows. The team collapsed to the ground, panting and battered. The beacon continued to pulse, its light now steady and rhythmic. Jara stood, her face pale but triumphant. "The signal is out," she said. "If anyone's out there, they'll hear it." Ethan leaned back against a rock, his chest heaving. "We did it," he said, a faint smile on his lips. "Now we just have to hope someone's listening." As the suns began to set, the team rested at the base of the beacon, their exhaustion mingling with cautious hope. For the first time since the crash, they had a real chance at rescue. The beacon's light pierced the darkening sky, a silent cry for help that they prayed would be answered. Ethan looked around at his team. Saran, ever fearless. Jara, the brilliant mind who had made it all possible. Rin, whose sharp instincts had saved them more than once, and Talia, whose fiery determination kept them going. They were tired, bruised, and battered, but they had done the impossible. "We've survived this long," Ethan said, his voice steady. "We'll survive a little longer. Help is coming." And for the first time in weeks, hope didn't feel like a distant dream. It felt real.